We're talking about In the Mood for Love today. 2000 film directed by Wong Kar-wai. In the Mood for Love stars Tony Leung, Maggie Cheung as neighbors who pursue a romantic relationship because their own spouses are in one together. Right? That's like the plot. What you remember most about In the Mood for Love are moments, is the beauty of the piece. I believe it's a very secretive film. I think the original title, or at least the working title, was Secrets, if I'm not mistaken. The film ends, obviously, with Tony whispering a secret into a hole and then covering it with mud. And that's where the secret will forever stay. And it is a true secret because the audience doesn't get to hear it, but we feel it. I think that there's a secrecy in everything. Secrecy in the way of the choreography, in the way of the visual composition itself. Secrecy in objects, because this is a movie that focuses on artifacts a lot. It's very touchable. You can feel this movie. When characters pass by walls, right, they'll like touch the side of it, like ever so slightly, like leaving traces of themselves, leaving traces of the secret, hints to the secret. And that secret is passion, that secret is romance, that secret is the human condition. Intimacy, in a large part, is about secrecy. Being intimate with someone is being extremely personal with that person. And intimacy is largely about secrecy, and In the Mood for Love gives us a romance that is so secretive that it's never truly allowed to flourish. Our lovers aren't allowed to bloom or burst. True love is secrecy, and it's painful, and it's full of longing and even nostalgia, considering it is a film set within the 60s. And I believe it's a film set within the 60s in Hong Kong about people from Shanghai. And I think that Wong Kar-wai, these are things that I'm not terribly educated about, but you can see it through the composition and through the moods, through the vibes, you know? You can see a kind of not juxtaposition, but possibly a contrast of modernity and the ultra modern world. And he also uses this kind of 60s atmosphere to express what it feels like to be a stranger in a very stylish and stylized universe. And it's hard not to watch the film and get extremely personal yourself. It's hard not to get intimate with the film. And this is where it gets cool for me. And this is maybe where I have something interesting to say about it. In the Mood for Love is a film that wants you to be personal with it, to be intimate with it. And as we've covered, I consider, and I think maybe Wong Kar-wai too, considers intimacy to be largely based on secrecy. And secrecy is not something that is founded within cruelty. Secrecy is founded within passion, within the inability to truly express everything that's going on within your soul, which is like the failure of the human condition itself, which lends itself to over romanticization and, of course, secrecy. And I think that In the Mood for Love, it's impossible not to watch it and get personal with it as well, get very intimate with it, to think of that one person, that one guy, that one girl that for some reason, you couldn't say stuff to. You couldn't make the words come out. You couldn't have her feel, but you knew there was some sort of mutual feeling, a mutual secret was forming. And that secret, which you could never speak, was love, because you could never truly articulate love. We're all unable to truly articulate love. So love itself is a secret because no one can really speak it. No one can truly express it. And it gets more tragic the less that is said, and the more that is felt, on account of the secret growing larger, yet no one is talking about it, or no one is able to. So, In the Mood for Love is a film where you can share your secrets with it, and it shares its secrets with you. And neither the film nor the viewer is able to truly express exactly what they just experienced, but they know that it was huge. A film is something that you can whisper a secret to, and you can just cover it with dirt or close the box, turn off the projector, and it stays with the film forever. I think Wong Kar-wai is a very personal sort of filmmaker, and I think a lot of his films, he's whispering secrets into it, and then once the film canister is at max, he's done. The secret is there and he can walk away from it. I think his films are therapeutic in a very large way for him, and and that sort of magic is given to the audience, the viewer who is willing to be that intimate with the film, and that's certainly who the kind of viewer that I am. Even Wong Kar-wai's camera, whether it's operated by Christopher Doyle or Mark Lee, this film had two different cinematographers because it was shot two different fucking times. I think it took 15 months to make this movie. Camera is full of longing too. The camera itself is lonely. Tony sitting at a chair at the side of the room, and then you'll have Maggie sitting on the bed, but they can't fit within the same frame. And the camera itself is almost aggravated about that because it keeps having to go back and forth. And sometimes it'll go over to Tony, and then Maggie will have to kind of strain to lean into the frame to say something to Tony, and then vice versa. Tony will have to strain to lean into the frame with Maggie, and the camera's just like, you need to fit into the same frame. Do you not understand that this is cinematic, that this is like romantic, that you need to fit within the same frame, and both characters are too stubborn or unable to physically do so. The camera is expressing so much within this film, and it's like that so many different times. Characters seem frozen in place, to make that moment larger or make the loss of that moment larger. What we lack in words, cinema or film can make up for in visuals. When the characters seem unable to truly speak and communicate with each other, the camera will do something sort of lavish, or like I said, will freeze time itself to strengthen the vocabulary, or to truly amplify the vocabulary of the moment, the missing vocabulary, the missing romantic vocabulary of the moment, to make it even larger and even more eternal. There are certain beautiful contradictions within it, and of course there should be, because love is about contradiction, right? So like, you can whisper a secret into a hole and cover it with dirt and it'll be there forever, yet the film ends with like, everything that belonged to this moment is now long gone. Nothing remains anymore. And that could be making like a socio-political statement about the state of Hong Kong within the year 2000 or within the 60s when the film is placed. Or it could also be making a statement about how like all that's left of love are traces, or even less than that. Maybe there is not even a trace, even though Wong Kar-wai goes through, I think, a lot of work to show us characters touching things, right? To show us characters touching the side, touching handrails, touching doors, touching everything but each other, right? Touching as many things as they could possibly touch. Cigarettes, to feel the artifacts, to leave a trace, to try to express that secret. But I guess the only way to do that is to speak it to nothing, in a hole in a wall, or as I'm convinced, that's what films are. And the most important part, and I think that what I want you to take away from this video, is that I don't think it's one dimensional in this regard. I think that like Wong Kar-wai and the actors and creatives involved with this piece can communicate their secrets to it, and it stays in there forever. But the viewer can do that as well, and that's what's a lot more important. When you watch this, you can also use it as a place to safely store your secrets. I think In the Mood for Love is an extremely romantic film, and an extremely lonely one. It speaks to lonely people, and I'm sure we've all been lonely. You and I have all been lonely at some point in our lives, so lonely that it's suffocating, that it makes us want to die. Right? It's one of the hardest things about existence. And what complicates it even more is that like, when you are lonely and then you see that person, that girl, that just, whoa, wow, and yet you can't tell them how to save you. You can't be intimate with them. You can't have them. You can't even explain it to them. You've been lonely for so long, or you are just so lonely that it's impossible for you to speak clearly. But the moments are there forever, and the choreography of love is a true thing. I think that when I think back on missed opportunities with romance, it has a sort of lyrical or musical dimension to the memory, right? Like, I see it in slow motion. I see it with similar to In the Mood for Love, with the same sort of like musical score underneath that. Da, 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 da. There are moments in this film that like are seared, burned into. into my memory, into my filmic memory. Like oh my God, there's some moments that are just so eternal. And it's about kind of magnifying those smaller moments as well, right? Like that moment in the cab where you almost hold hands, but for whatever reason, it's refused. That moment where you knew that you understood that person better than they've ever been understood before, and likewise, vice versa, she understood you just as deeply. And yet, that's where it started, and that's where it ended, and you walked right by each other. Loneliness is so terrifying, and so almost terrifyingly final, that once you've succumbed to it for so long, once it's had you for so long, you can't get out of it. It's inescapable. And I think that in the 60s in Hong Kong, as well as in the year 2000, as well as now in our current day, alienation is inescapable. Alienation is simply an everyday event, an everyday feeling. That's another beautiful part of this film, is that it shows what happens to love within a world that is increasingly more and more alienating. You've been alienated in every single way. I mean, we see both characters at work, and there's a considerable amount of alienation involved. There's definitely alienation from their communities. Of course, it's not like a vicious alienation, because that's not how this kind of social alienation works. It's more quiet. It's more sad. And love is within that too. Love itself is alienated in the modern world, and it's extremely difficult to feel spontaneous or be able to express yourself purely when you've been alienated your entire life, and when this love is also starting to become a product of alienation. Maybe if you speak it into existence, maybe if you tell the secret of love, it too will just fall victim to the same sort of boring alienation as everything else has fallen victim to. I think colors play a huge role in this. I mean, red is the most significant color, and sometimes we're swallowed by red. Maggie's red dress, the red curtains, the red carpet, the red everything. And it's interesting because red is a louder color that certainly represents, attractiveness and power and danger. All of the different things that our two lovers can't express, can't come to terms with, can't possess, right? And yet they're possessed of those feelings everywhere they go. Like everywhere they go reminds them either of alienation or of passion and sexual attraction, as in like the red color scheme to everything. Like it's suffocating. The alienation is suffocating on one hand, and then the secrecy, the passion, the unfulfilled passion is also just as huge, right? But what's different about red, what's different about the passion and attractiveness and power, is that it's beautiful, and that it adds such a almost mysterious sort of layer to everything. Such a beauty to every motion. And that's how I think we do remember loves in our lives. And possibly also in this Wong Kar-wai film, it could be how the Chinese people, or how all people in general, idealize or remember a certain moment in time as an entire culture, as more cinematic than it ever was, and more full of loss than it ever was, considering that what colors the memory itself, the memory of love, or the memory of a shared like cultural history, what colors it is power, what colors it is attractiveness, what colors it is expression and loudness, but what populates it are people and lovers who are too afraid to even touch each other, to hold each other in a meaningful way. And because of their inability to hold each other meaningfully, everything becomes meaningful. Every tiny thing becomes massively important and celebrated within memory. Meaningless things become entirely meaningful and beautiful when we remember them, when we hold on to them, and especially when we're lonely. When you're lonely, you think about that girl and the fact that she maintained eye contact or looked at you for an extra half a second. What was meaningless within the moment is the most meaningful thing in retrospect, is the most meaningful thing right now. And, and you're both surrounded with red. And yet, the loneliness is so much and the alienation is so much that you can't speak a word of it. In the Mood for Love is also a film about rehearsals. They act out leaving their significant others. They act out catching their significant others in the act of cheating. They act out what it must have been like when their significant others also fell for each other. It's fun because this could also be a film about two lovers, like two really passionate and physically intimate lovers who aren't there, who we don't see. It's a film that I think is just so fucking gorgeous. It's so beautiful, and it is sad, but it makes me feel happy. Man, it makes me feel pretty good. All things considered, I feel good when I leave this film. When I'm done with this film, I feel good. Maybe because I feel understood. At my absolute loneliest, I feel understood. At my most misunderstood, I am understood by In the Mood for Love by Wong Kar-wai, by this year 2000 masterwork. I'm understood by it. Thank you for watching me.